arrampicarti sull'albero.
Ma come ti sei fatto grande?
Ma che bel maglione.
La magia del Natale?
Tombola!
Vivila con chi vuoi grazie a Via Milano Parking. Parcheggia da meno di 4 euro al giorno. Scopri di più su viamilanoparking.eu.
Con i natalissimi €1 fino al 24 dicembre il notebook HP con processore Intel Core i5 è tuo a solo €499, perché €1 batte forte sempre.
doing good.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Professor. Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Please forgive me. I was a little bit late because I was stuck in a phone call. I'm sorry.
Don't worry.
Sorry, could you place your microphone closer to your, yes.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
yeah, that's much better.
Okay.
That's much better. Thank you so much. Okay, so I took a look to your thesis. Um, Sorry?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. It seems to me that you did a lot of job, and I am glad to see that you worked a lot. I'd like to make some observations, and probably as you reply, we can discuss about the possible improvements of your work.
Okay.
Okay. So, if I correctly understood, you plan to graduate in February. Is that?
Yes. Because I didn't
Okay.
find some job in here, so advance
Okay.
later.
Okay, so our goal is to make you able to graduate in February. I think that it is definitely possible because you already did a lot of work. The only thing that you should do is to make up your work in a better way in order to improve it for the final graduation, for the final discussion.
Okay.
Let's start from the beginning of your work. It seems to me that your index. Okay, I tried
Yes.
to read the document. Okay, it seems to me that your index is very complex. It's very nested, very developed. So I definitely agree with your organization. In some cases, it seems to me that probably you are trying to summarize very complex arguments in a too short way.
Yes.
And I don't suggest you to be so schematic, because the feeling that you can give to your readers is that you are too simplistic, that you are trying to summarize very complex facts in very, very simple phrases, which is not definitely the aim of the scientific research.
Okay.
Especially talking about the specific parts of your work when you try to explain the international context
Okay.
of the industrial renovation, because probably you know that industrial renovation is something that has got a long history up until now, because it started in the between the 60s and the 70s.
Yes.
In the late 70s in Europe. And it, just a moment, sorry, just a moment. Okay, sorry. As I told you, the history of the post-industrial renovation processes started in Europe.
Yes.
In the late 70s, when the deindustrialization of Europe begin recognizable. And only speaking about Europe, the history of the changings about the scientific approach to this topic is very interesting, because we started from the idea of the industrial archaeology, and then we moved to different approaches, to different ideas, and so it is very complex. If you move to the United States, where the history began a little bit later, you can find other approaches. For instance, there is an interesting book written by a colleague of mine, which is titled Re-USA, written by Matteo Robiglio, which is a professor of Politecnico di Torino, which is dedicated to the examination of some cases in the USA. If you go to China, the problem is again different and complex. So what I suggest to you is not being so simplistic when you try to summarize your.
Sorry, Professor. I can't hear you now.
Sorry. So you did not understand a word of about what I said in the last 10 minutes, I suppose.
Yes.
Okay. So sorry. Sorry. I tried to recap what I was saying. And as you probably know, in the history of the industrial renovation, is a very complex history because it started in the late 70s in Europe. And if you examine the cases of the European cases, you can find in the last 40 years, 40, 50 years,
Yes.
an evolution of the scientific approach to the industrial renovation, which is very complex. And if you go in the single cases of the single states, you will find different approaches again respected to this argument. If you have taken into account the case of the USA, of the United States of America, you will find other approaches. For instance, there is an interesting book written by a colleague of mine, Matteo Robiglio, which is a professor of Politecnico di Torino, which is titled Re-USA, which is dedicated to the examination of some cases of industrial renovation in the USA. If you go to China, you will find other approaches, other facts, because in China it is more recent, this topic. But despite this fact, in China there is a growing and an interesting debate about post-industrial renovation. So this is to say that, in my opinion, if you raise a topic, which is, for instance, the industrial renovation in Europe, you cannot solve this problem just saying a couple of words, a couple of phrases about this fact. You must develop it, because otherwise you are just touching some arguments, but you do not develop them in a satisfying way. Keep always in your mind that the opposite to what it happens normally in the divulgative literature, in the scientific research, the main goal of the work is to go deeper in the facts. So it is important that you don't touch too many topics, but you touch a very limited number of topics where you can go really in depth, because otherwise it is not interesting in this case. For instance, there is a part of your research when you say, just a moment, I try to retrieve your document. Yeah, it is here. Just a moment. It is opening the documents. It doesn't open document like this, but okay, here, for instance, in chapter 4, you start with this subchapter, with this paragraph. The second paragraph, classification of the ways in which industrial heritage is reused. And this paragraph, which in my mind could be treated in an entire book, because the ways are a lot, is treated by you just with some 3 or 4 phrases that say, okay, this is industrial renovation.
Okay.
In my opinion, this is really too much simplistic. And so I suggest you to take more care to go deeper in your reasonings about this fact.
Okay.
Another thing that I would like to discuss with you is the fact that at least in the first part, in the first chapter of your thesis, you don't use any quotation. You don't refer your reasoning to an international literature, and you pack all the literature review in just the last paragraph, which is titled literature review.
Yes.
Okay. On one side, I must say that I can understand this attitude because you tried to pack everything in the chapter of the literature review. But for a reader, it is quite weird to read this kind of text because you have pages and pages of reasonings by you, and they seem not supported by any kind of literature review. And only at the end of the chapter, you find in a very compressed way, the all the literature review that you did. So I would like to invite you to treat your literature review not in this way, but more in during the text that construct your thesis. Because, for instance, you start saying that, okay, you start with this chapter. Background of the study, research aims, research hypothesis, research methodology. Okay, these 4 paragraphs
Yes.
are basically part of the literature review because when you explain your research question, you cannot explain your research question without taking into account what international debate already said about the same argument. Okay, if I say I would like to investigate this topic because this is crucial, this is relevant for me, I have to say, as I am saying this, I have to say in parallel, I want to study it because the international debate is not so satisfying in my opinion, because in the international debate, I found some opinions which are these ones, but I would like to put myself in an intermediate position. So I would like to start a new way of observing these cases. This is very important because you cannot say so much about the work that you want to do without citing anything and just putting at the end all the literature review. Literature review is something which is included in your research.
Yes.
Is that clear or
Yes,
not?
it's clear.
Okay, because you always have to keep in your mind. I think that you will not spend so much work to do this, because actually you already wrote all the right things. But I would like to invite you to mix them in a different way, because you always have to keep in your mind that when we do scientific research, it's like building a giant building was basement, and was ground floor, was first floor, and so on, have been built by other people that came first before us. And so when we do scientific research, it's like climbing from that building just on the top, just on the rooftop, and putting on the rooftop our stone, which is our contribution to the growth of the building. Okay. So in order to arrive to that, you have to explain how you climb this building, how this building is made. This is very important. So I think that it will not be so hard for you to do it, but it is very important, because otherwise you give the impression that all this first part is just a reasoning of yours made without any kind of a confrontation with the international debate, which is wrong, because actually you did it. Okay. Besides this, I would like to make up your mind about some words that you use in your text, because you know that in our field, the words are important. And so when we speak about these kind of arguments that you are treating in your thesis, we have several different definitions. We can speak about urban renovation. We can speak about requalification. We can speak about regeneration and so on. And all these different, it seems to me that you are using all these words in a quite different way. I can assure you that if you find some professors, for instance, some professors of history of architecture in your board that will evaluate your thesis, probably they will be a little bit upset by this in different way you are using these terms. And so since each one of these terms has got a long history, and a literature that supports the formation of this idea, I would like to make up your mind about this. Because, for instance, when you speak about requalification or renovation and regeneration, you are speaking about two completely different things. Because if you speak about requalification, it means simply something which takes into account just the physical aspects of the building. So the requalification is just all the whole system of all the operation that I do on a building, on a public space, on a urban complex, which are meant to renovate it, so to change the physical shape of the building. But if you speak about regeneration, this is more complex because urban regeneration is taking into account not just the physical transformation of the building or of an urban environment, but it is mostly taking into account also the social and economic transformation. So when normally an urban regeneration process is made on both physical and not physical actions, and the complex task of these processes is how to keep together the physical and non-physical aspects. So I think that it is important for you to clarify this argument. Are you considering this topic only by the physical aspects, under the physical aspects, or are you considering these processes of transformation also from the social and economic aspects and cultural aspects and so on? Because in one case, you can speak about requalification or renovation. In the other case, you can speak about regeneration. Is that clear?
Okay, yes.
No, okay. There are also some weird things. For instance, in a paragraph, you say, just a moment, I try to find it. Oh, okay. The paragraph 3.4. Drivers driven by industrial heritage. This is quite weird in English, in my opinion, because a driver is something that drives, not something that is driven. So the drivers are not driven. The drivers drive something else.
Yes.
So I think it's a quite weird phrase, this one. My final observation is less an observation of methodology, but it is more an observation about the general meaning of your work. What I find strange is that you are applying your work on a case study, which is the Luoyang case study. But up until now, I cannot see the part dedicated to the project. So you are just describing this case, but I don't see the part dedicated to the project. What are you planning to do about this part?
Okay, for this part, I think maybe first to give some suggestion about improve, such as first is about how to deal with satisfy, such as because now it is the areas is in the law is mean yes, because it have the first class protection industrial building, second level, third level, but it's for the industrial area Luoyang. It is a little bit. I think it's not very good. So maybe it's better to classify. I mean, has better to interview from the factory to protect the factory and think about it and analyze the factory. So use its way to classify.
Yeah, but you are talking about something which is limited to the domain of the words. So you are speaking about level of classification of protection of the building. So what you are speaking about is something that will change, for instance, the regulation about this building. Okay, but this is a thesis which is done in architectural design. So as a thesis in architectural design, you are supposed to use the design in order to do your thesis. I mean, the goal of your thesis is not the design. So I'm not expecting from you that you can do all alone, all by yourself, an entire project for the entire building, to the 1 to 20 scale, to the scale of the technological details and so on. But what is important in this kind of thesis, since you choose to do a thesis in architectural design, is that you use the design activity as an instrument of research. So you are explaining in the first part of your thesis all the international cases, the international debate about industrial innovation. Then you go to the Chinese case, which means that you are explaining how in China this topic has been evolved, how you changed this, how you find the changings in the sentiment of the scientific world in China about this kind of arguments and so on. Okay, this is perfect. This is perfect. But when you arrive to your case study, it is important to use the case study. If you look at the thesis of the
yes, yeah. I first studied a German case, and I found it have some policy to improve, and also they treat because it's already a pollution area, so they use some years step by step to recover the environment. And beside it, I think I study another point is urban with the industrial, this kind of relationship. So I think I put forward some suggestion about industrial area, how to combine in the such a different area, such as in the middle of the industrial area.
I understand, but what is lacking, in my opinion, is the representation part. Because you are speaking about these cases and about your case only by words, but you are not a lawyer. You are not a person which uses only the words. Our specificity about art as architects, as designers, is to use the drawings in order to explain what we do and to explain our analysis. If you look for the books that I suggested you, the book of Matteo Robiglio, Re-USA, you will find it in our library. You will see that he explains a lot of cases of study with some very interesting drawings. And this is very important for us because it is what we call normally a spatialization of our reasoning. So the difference between an architect and another person which belongs to another culture is that normally the other professionals use the words, only the words, in order to explain their ideas. As architects, normally we specialize our ideas. So we use the words, but besides the words, we use representations, drawings, plans, sonometries, and so on. And so what you should do, I see that in your thesis, you are using a lot of pictures that come from other cases. But you should provide some original representations of your work, because otherwise it is not a thesis of design.
Okay. So, Professor, do you mean in the maybe number five paragraph
Yes.
to add some cases drawing by myself?
Yes, but okay, let's speak about the last chapter, the chapter where you speak about, no, not the last chapter, speak the chapter number 7, when you speak about the factory in Loyang.
Okay.
Okay, you are providing here a lot of pictures. Some of them are taken from books or official documents, and some of them are made by you. For instance, this picture, the figure 26, map of the evolution of industrial land in downtown Loyang and so on. But my concern is about these pictures, because they are very, very general. They are at a scale of a super urban scale. So I think 1 to 10,000 or something like that. So they are useful. They can be useful only for a general framework, the description of the framework, but they are not useful for describing your case of study. I must confess that even though I've read your work, you explain me a lot of your of this case, I still don't understand how this factory is made right now, how it is done, how many buildings it has, because I don't see one drawing which is explaining this. And you should provide some drawings that can describe the building, and some drawings that can describe the transformation that you are imagining for the building, because otherwise it is not a work of design.
Okay.
It could be another work. You are not forced to do a work of design, but I must warn you that since you are doing a thesis with me, and I am a professor of architectural design, this thesis will be evaluated by the board as a thesis of design. And so the board will expect a thesis which is treating the transformation of the building, not just only very super general reasoning about this, about the industrial renovation and so on. This is the premise that you do. This is the background that you describe for your work. And I think, as I told you, I think that you did a good job in this sense. So I do agree with almost all the things that you wrote about this case. But you are providing a very important background, and you are not using it for your work. Where is the project for the building?
I prepared a lot, but for me, I didn't understand how to combine with the thesis. Yeah, I built the models and do a lot of analyze from the street, but it's a thesis, so I'm confused. So maybe get some suggestion is better. I will know how.
I think that the most interesting thing that you could do is to take a look to some other theses that have been made by students of mine. You can find them on the web, on the list of the honor thesis, for instance. You could find the best theses that have been discussed. They are available on the website of the Polytechnic.
Okay.
And what I think is that since you are all alone. First of all, you are working alone. You are not in a group of persons. You are working on a very huge building, so it is a very complex object from the urban point of view. I'm not, as I told you, I'm not expecting that you do a project in the traditional sense. I mean, in 1 to 5,000 scale, 1 to 1,000 scale, 1 to 200 scale, with all the details and so on, because it would be a too big work for you. Okay, probably what you could provide is more something which is closer to the idea of the guidelines. So if you would be, for instance, the consultant of the municipality of Luoyang, and the mayor of Luoyang would ask you to steer, to do the governance of the transformation of this process. What could you do? Probably you could create a small booklet of maybe 30 pages of guidelines that could allow all the single designers that will intervene in this area to follow a general idea, so a general strategy. Your goal could be to define the strategy, the general strategy, which could be defined by some drawings, some representation, because it cannot be just described in terms of text. It can be also explained with visualizations.
Okay, I understand. I have studied and do some drawing about this. I mean, maybe I will give you a very fast feedback because I have already studied a lot, but I don't know how to combine design with the thesis. Yeah.
Okay, let me see if I can find something. Just a moment, huh? No. No. I'm trying to find some examples.
Yes.
No, these are the evaluations. Okay. Okay. I must choose the right one. I find some examples. Just a minute, Sam.
Yes.
I'm trying to find the best one for you, for the best example.
Professor, it is about the guideline example or is a case study example?
I think that there are no so big differences between the two things, because the case study is for you is Loyang, and you can treat the case study in different ways. So you can use the case study as a matter for a single project, but which is not your case. Or maybe on the case study, you could provide some guidelines for the transformation, which is closer to what I suggested to do. Just a moment, because I'm trying to show you some theses that were made by some Chinese students, so probably they're closer to your idea of final work. Okay, let's try with this. That probably is the closer to your task. I share my screen. Just a moment. Can you see the thesis?
Yes.
Okay, so this is as you can see, this is a thesis of a Chinese student of the double degree program that we have with the South China University of Technology. And this is dedicated to the renovation of a big square in the city of Guangzhou. So the argument is quite different by Europe one. But what I would like to say is, what I would like to show you is how there is a first part, which is the more theoretical part, which is more or less similar to the job that you already did, which is constructing the basis for the reasoning with all the international literature and so on, which provide also a series of pictures, schemes, explaining the all the things. And then it goes to the analysis of the site. As you can see, As you can see, the analysis of the site is made with a series of drawings, which explain how the area is located in South China, what is the area that we are considering, the scope of the study, and so on. The role of the water, the cross sections of the streets, and so on. And if you go at the end of the work, you can see that there are some guidelines. There is an analysis, of course, and at the end of the work, you can find some guidelines about the renovation of this area, which is based, as you can see, on general rules. The students did not work on single buildings, but she worked on a series of rules that could change the aspect of the entire neighborhood through this kind of drawings, this kind of maps, and so on. And at the end of the work, explaining how this, you can see the kind of pictures that explain how the urban streets can change, applying some new ideas. You see the space before, the space after, and so on. So this is something similar to the idea of some guidelines, because these are not detailed projects, okay? But these projects are made to suggest the city designers how to work in such spaces? What kind of strategies to use? You can see this, for instance, a picture of the existing situation with a picture of some possible transformation of the situation. After this, the students did not investigate the single buildings. So you will not find the technical details, the structural details, or the technological details of this building in this thesis. But this is not the role of work, because a work like this is more similar to a general guidelines that the city can use, can adopt in order to steer, to do the governance of this transformation. And this is, sorry, this is rotated, but I think that you can understand how the master plan of the area can change adopting this kind of rules. In this case, the students decided to work on the borders of the area and so on. So this is an axonometric drawing where you can see. I try to rotate the. No, sorry, I cannot do it. Oh, sorry. Oh. Okay, this is an axonometric view of the master plan, and as you can see, this is a very comprehensive drawing that explains all the strategy on this area. I think that this kind of work is what lacks from your thesis, because you are speaking a lot about the industrial renovation and so on, but you are not saying a word about the possible destiny of your case of study. So what I would like to suggest to you in this last month that you have to, it is more than a month actually, it is almost 2 months of work, is trying to work to develop this kind of analysis.
Okay, understand. Yeah.
Okay. So I stop here. Now, one of the last things that I would like to tell you is about please check very carefully when you use some bibliographic references and so on, because, for instance, in a certain point of your thesis, I read something which get me shivers on my backbone because you are citing a very, very famous book, which is Death and Life of Great American Cities. But you are citing this book as Jane and Jacobs. No, definitely no. There were not two persons. It was just one person, one female, which was called Jane Jacob. Jane was the name, Jacobs was the surname. So please do not these kind of mistakes, because they are very embarrassing for your discussion. So please check very carefully the correctness of your quotations. Okay, when you cite a book, paper, an author, check very carefully the right spelling of the name, and especially the fact of one name or two names and so on. Okay, this is very important.
Okay. Professor, if I want to graduate in February, do you have suggestion about the time arrangement? About the schedule, such as I give you when I finish the design part?
I think that nowadays you should concentrate your work. You have two things basically to do. You have to write and you have to draw. You have to draw a lot. So I would suggest you to start from the part of the design, because it is the part which is completely lacking for the moment in your thesis. And I would suggest you to use the drawing not just to work on the design of the case study, but also to as an instrument to analyze the other cases of study. Take a look to the book that I suggested you, the book of Matteo Orbiglio. You will see how it is possible to analyze a series of cases of study by redesigning them, just providing one drawing, maybe a simplified drawing for one of them, But if you redesign the thesis of study, you will have a comparable situation between all the different projects. Okay. And besides this, you must write, I mean, mostly rewrite some parts, because I think that you write already a lot in your thesis. You should reorganize a little bit the things that you already wrote in the way I suggested.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And this is interesting in my opinion, because this is valid for me. I don't think it's the same for you, but I discovered in my life that writing and drawing is tiring in a different way. So it activates different part of our brain. And so when you are tired of writing, you can relax yourself a little bit, starting to draw. And when you are tired to drawing, you can relax yourself writing something. At the end of the day, you will be tired, and so you have to relax yourself with something else. But if you can balance these two kind of activities, writing and drawing, I can assure you that you can proceed very, very quickly. When you have something ready to discuss, please send it to me. Even during the Christmas holidays, I cannot answer you that I will be very quick to answer, but I will see my computer, so I can answer you by email, and so we can discuss even during the Christmas holidays. And then immediately after the Christmas holidays, we can meet again to discuss your work.
Okay, thank you, Professor. I will do it.
Okay. Finally, I really suggest you to take a look at some theses that have been discussed in the last years or in the last months that are similar to this, because they will give you a better idea of how a thesis can be done. A thesis in design, in architectural design. Okay, because if you chose a thesis in history of architecture, for instance, probably the goal of the thesis would have been completely different. So it is not mandatory to design something in a thesis of history of architecture. But you chose to work in a thesis of architectural design. So the design is not the final goal of your thesis. The final goal is the dissertation, but the design is an instrument that you use in order to find some things.
Yes, I think I didn't put the design part in the thesis because I'm not sure I'm totally writing serious or need to combine design and thesis.
Yeah, but you're an architect, so you must take the responsibility of saying something for the future.
Okay, understand. Thank you, Professor. Okay.
Okay.
Merry Christmas, maybe.
Merry Christmas also to you.
Thank you, Professor. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.